have to warn you that irises are one of my favorite plants. Since I was a little girl, I have loved them. There was a vacant lot out behind our house in Baltimore when I was growing up, and on that vacant lot was one flower, and it was a purple iris. I waited for it every spring to bloom and just relished the entire time it was blooming. Irises, it's not just me that loves irises. They have been a part of man's cultivated gardens for more than 4,000 years. An Egyptian king in the temple of Karnak, Thutmose, I think it's the third, has pictures of irises which he cultivated all over his tomb. Irises are, most human beings can't help but say that they love irises. Irises actually have two forms. One is the rhizomatous iris, which I think most of you are familiar with, but there are also irises that are true bulbs, and that's where the iris reticulatas come in. Iris reticulatas are very short irises. They are also known as rock garden irises or dwarf irises. They only get to be this tall, and these little troopers, even though they only get to be this tall, the blossom is easily a good 3 to 4 inches. So for a tiny plant, they produce a huge blossom. One of the wonderful things about iris reticulatas is that they are one of the earliest flowers to bloom in the spring. Sometimes they even beat out the snowdrops. That's how early they bloom. And because of that, they are one of the most important, and hear me loud and clear, they are one of the most important pollinator plants we have on the earth today. Because as the bees come out of hibernation and they wake up, they're hungry, and there's nothing to eat except those wonderful blossoms, the pollen from those wonderful blossoms of the iris reticulatas. The word reticulata refers to the coating, the tissue-like netted coating that surrounds each bulb. They are the only irises that have this coating, and that's where the name reticulata comes from. So if you're interested in pollination and preserving our pollinators and nourishing them, if you're longing for something that blooms very early in the spring with intense colors, there is just about nothing that can compete with the iris reticulatas. In this little video, we are going to talk about 3: Iris reticulata harmony, Iris reticulata alida, and Iris reticulata danfortii. And boy, are you in for a treat. This is Iris reticulata danfortii, the only yellow available in the Iris reticulatas. It has those cute brown freckles on each petal, and again, it's a very early bloomer and a great nourishment for the bees. This is Iris reticulata danfortii. I love the bulbs of spring, but of all the bulbs, my favorite are clearly the Iris reticulatas, known as rock garden irises because they take up very little space, and they are also very, very short. They never reach a height of greater than 6 inches. They were discovered in the Caucasus and the areas of the Middle East and brought first to Europe in 1575. They then, in the early 1600s, made their way to the United States. This is Iris reticulata harmony, the darkest of the Iris reticulatas. Iris reticulatas are very, very important because they are one of the earliest of the spring blooming bulbs, and the pollinators love them because there's little nourishment to be found elsewhere. This is Iris reticulata Harmony. The deer do not like it. It is quite deer resistant. Here's a lovely close-up of that sweet flower. Remember, it feeds the bees. This is Iris reticulata alida. It's a paler blue, a lighter color blue than Harmony, which is more purple than blue. It is too deer resistant, and it nourishes the pollinators because it blooms so early in the spring. Here's a close-up of this undeniably sweet flower. Well, we've talked about 3 beautiful dwarf irises, rock garden irises, Iris reticulatas. I hope you've enjoyed this video. All of these bulbs are available on our website, which is www.harvesting-history.com. Each year there are only limited quantities available of these bulbs. So I encourage you, if you have an interest, to make your orders as soon as possible. These bulbs will not ship until the end of September or even possibly early October. So place your orders as soon as possible because there very much are very limited quantities of these precious irises.